Open draw.io and create a new diagram. It needs to be called example.draw.io. It's blank. And then we save it, Control S, and we're going to save it in here, example.draw.io in this directory. And we need to make sure that the that's compressed. We have to make sure that it's not compressed. So we go to File, Properties, Not Compressed, Apply, and then we'll save it again. File, Save. Go back to here and do the cat again. And there we go. It's not compressed. And we'll see that it's an XML file that's not compressed. We'll drop a rhombus for the input. Say there, let's round the corners on, round it. And we'll color it deep green since it's an input. And we'll give it any name we want, but I'll call it stood in because everyone knows what that means. We'll drop another rhombus for the output. Is over here somewhere. And it's rounded already, and we're going to make it deep yellow for the output. And we'll give it any name we want, and I'll give it the name stood out. So that's the beginning of our top level container. Now we want to create a component. So we make a body. We'll call that body echo. And we'll color it gray. Colors don't actually matter. It's only for your eyeballs. And then we need inputs and outputs, and those were ellipses. We don't need ellipses this big. So we'll make it a bit smaller. There we go. We'll give it any name we want, which in this case I want stood in. And I'll just clone it and make an output for it also. And call that one stood out. Again, any name will do. I like the way that's lined up. The input I want to color with a light green. The output I want to color with a light yellow, just to remind us which way things are going. And then we need to show that the input is connected to the box and the output of the box is connected to the port stood out. And in both of these cases, I'm going to make them dotted lines. Again, it doesn't matter. There we go, dotted. The graphical shape of the line doesn't matter. It's just that it's an arrow that goes from here to here and from here to there. That's the only thing that the software looks for. And then I'm going to group these in a container groupie, or what's called a container in draw.io. I'm going to make it large enough to fit all of that stuff into it. Make it even larger than large. There we go. And we'll shrink it a bit. Containers in Draw.io need to have things dropped into them. So I'm going to move that in. Now all of a sudden, container is all one piece, and if I move the container, the whole thing moves. And I'm going to make a copy of that. I want two of these. I'm going to have enough room, maybe not. So I'm going to get rid of this panel here, like that. I'll move this stood out way over there somewhere. move this container here. I'll move that container here. Oh, there we go. And then, oh, I was trying to do it on that line. There, and this one's not lined up nicely. There we go. Then we want to show the actual input. Oh, the input port of the component going into the stood-in port of the first box, and we want to show the output of the last stood-out box to go to the stood-out output port, and then we want to connect the two together. And in this case, all these things are interesting arrows. I'll make them not dotted. This again. So there we go. So now it goes from stood in to stood in, performs a function which produces a stood out. The stood out goes to that stood in. It performs some sort of function which produces a stood out. And that stood out goes to the stood out of the part. And we're going to save this file, save. And then we can try running it. We'll clear that junk there. Make run draw.io. Oh, I forgot to name the tab is called page 1. It should be called main. So we'll double click on it, change the name. And so now down here it's called main. We'll save it again. I did that with Apple S. And then I'm going to go near this stuff again. And do the make. There we go. It runs through it and produces one message out on stood out, which is hello world. And what we'll see is we passed in hello world here. It went all the way through to the other end and came out as a message stood out being hello world. Now we're going to try to parallelize this program. So we're going to knock out this line here by hitting delete. And grab that, move it over to here. I like these lines. Personally, I like them to be rounded. So I'll make them rounded. And then I'll get rid of this for the moment. Bring this down to where it's kind of in the middle of everything. I'll bring this one down to where it's kind of in the middle of everything. No, kind of in the middle of everything there. I'll make this rounded too. Rounded. There, and then we need to connect this stood in to that stood in. And then this stood out. You can see what's happening here is Draw.io, when I hover over a closed graphical object, it gives me connection points and highlights the one that I'm on, which is the big green dot thing, and I can drag a line out from it. And the same goes here. It'll go to there. And what I've done is I've told it where I want it to connect. There's also a way to do connections that say connect anywhere on this figure, but I don't want to do that. And again, we're going to save it. And then we're going to try it. And this should produce two messages. Clear this. And run it again. There we go. And there it is, two messages. That one and the second one. And the reason there's two is that we get the hello world coming in. It gets duplicated and split off to here and duplicated and split off to here. This thing does some processing, produces hello world on the output. That goes to this stood out. This guy also gets a hello world. He produces a stood out, which goes to this stood out and another message. Two messages in a row. So one from here and one from there, and we get two messages. Hello world and hello world. End of that.